so many people have that mentality of when everything presents itself in a perfect way to me, then I'll get to it. Then I'll do it. Once I have the money, once I have the car, once I have the house, once I have this, then I'll go after my dreams, or then I'll go after a different career, or then I'll do this, then I'll do that. And that when never comes, never. No matter how successful you are, no matter how well you think you're doing, you're going to add another if onto that equation.
This is the Reframe Your Journey podcast, because we know you can go further and faster together. It doesn't have to be a guessing game. Each session, we'll be getting into advice and tactical tools centered around the 3 S's of strategy, systems, and long-term success. I'm Greg Ryder, entrepreneur, course creator, and coach. Let's dive in. My guest this week is one of my favorite people to follow on the LinkedIn platform. Not only does he continue to support a wide range of amazing t-shirts, he is one of the OG video post people and is just so smooth in his delivery of content. He beat the daily commute into Manhattan after just 6 years into his corporate journey, and now, 17 years later, running a thriving coaching business. Absolute respect for his incredible example of consistency, sharing valuable daily content and details, like how he generated $48,000 of revenue in just 30 days. Please welcome Nat Berman. Nat, welcome to the show. This is the Reframe Content Series podcast. We are interviewing entrepreneurs from all over the globe that are making an impact, both on the LinkedIn platform, off the LinkedIn platform, just making a difference. I'm very excited to chat with you today. I love your content. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Life is full and crazy and all the good stuff in between. So, I'm not going to dig in too far. We covered some of that in your intro, but I would love to hear a little bit about what was your, TSN turning point for those of you familiar with the sports world. And they always have those in the game, the turning point, the momentum change from what you thought was right, moving down the corporate path or whatever, you're coming out of school, following the plan that's there for us, to now doing something for yourself. You're 15 years in, I believe I saw, and still going strong. So maybe you can share with us a little bit of what was the turning point for you?
Well, it's almost an unbelievable answer, but it's true nonetheless. My turning point was my first day of work, my first day. And I remember doing a whole post on this. It was 2001 and I was 22, and it was literally my first day of work. I live in New York and I commuted from Long Island, and I thought it was so cool that I was wearing a suit and I had to commute like everybody else. I got on the train. I lived in Port Washington, Long Island at the time, and it would be a commute into Penn Station, followed by 2 subway rides into the World Trade Center, oddly enough. And separate story, I quit that job only a few weeks before 9/11, which is insane. But again, like I said, that's a separate story. But the turning point, what I'll never forget this, is when I was on the train, I saw all these other guys and women, wearing nice clothes, wearing suits, and none of them looked happy. Just not one person. They just looked miserable. And I just had this gut crap feeling. And then it was obviously amplified by going to the city, followed by cold calling for 8 hours and then having to, go 2 hours back. So that was always in my head, and never liked authority since I was very, very little. And I just think the whole boss thing, even if it's a good boss, it always rubbed me wrong. And thankfully, it only took about 6 years of doing that whole corporate thing before I got out. So there's my answer.
Wow, six years. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, it takes people a lifetime sometimes. It takes,
Sure.
decades, right? That's a good indicator, right? You can see the people that have gone before you 10, 20 years in and really get a sense of, are they happy going in? Not to mention a long commute. Usually the long commute home is probably enough. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I
hey,
had a very weird like trajectory commute wise. I remember like that was my first sort of obstacle. Like everyone has things that they dislike, right? I tend to believe in addition by subtraction. So you find a lot of things you don't like, you remove them from your life, and that opens up, more things. And so yeah, my first commute was like, I don't know, 2 hours each way. And throughout that next 6.5 years or so, it went from like 2 hours to like hour and a half. And then eventually when I was in Manhattan, I only had to walk like 12 minutes to my office. And then after that, there was no commute because it was all from home. But um, that was a cool little like victory, was to go from 2 hours
right.
to zero. That was really cool. Anyway.
That's how much time back in your day. Multiply that over a week,
Oh yeah, good
months,
God!
years,
Imagine like
right?
I always say, and look, you got to do what you got to do to support yourself and your family, and I totally get that and appreciate it. But if you have the option, if you're commuting 2 hours to something, you better, I hope to God that you like it and get something out of it that's very valuable, because otherwise, that is just I personally think it's miserable. That's tough, man. Really tough.
Yeah, that's a lot of time
Yeah.
and energy, just
Yep.
even that
Definitely.
focus coming in the door after that. You do coaching and you're helping a lot of people. I love your newsletter. There's so much value there. I'm going to share a post here that you put up here. So this one is about, one of the most toxic sentence starters in the universe, you say here, which is, I'll do it when. And you go on to talk a little bit about it, why that's such a dangerous thought or sentence and habit probably for a lot of people that build, I'll do it when I'm here. I'll do it when this time comes. You talk a little bit about a potential client conversation that you had. What else can you share a little bit around that you see from potential clients or working with your clients around that, waiting for that perfect time, that someday to come? Like, what do you see there?
Yeah. That's just a sentence that hits home. I think it's personal to me because I think all of us have sort of been there when it's like, it's almost like you'll allow yourself to do X when Y happens. So it's like, it's almost like a math equation. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, as long as this situation turns into what I want, then I'll go after that. And that was with this particular person, it was just so black and white to me that how our thoughts were completely misaligned, in a good way, because those are the people that I tend to help and focus on. But so many people, including myself, have that mentality of, it's almost like when everything presents itself in a perfect way to me, then I'll get to it. Then I'll do it. Right. Once I have the money, once I have the car, once I have the house, once I have this, then I'll go after my dreams, or then I'll go after a different career, or then I'll do this, then I'll do that. And, that when never comes, never, no matter how successful you are, no matter how well you think you're doing, you're going to add another if onto that equation, because that's just how life works. That's how the human brain works. It's very hard to just, I've met very few people, including myself, who kind of sit and they're like, you know what? It's fine. I'm cool. Everything's fine. Like, I know for myself, that's not how my brain works, but I don't feel bad about it. I sort of go along with that and say, well, I do like building. I like having goals and being excited. And as soon as I feel like I'm not building, I got to build something else. And that's a good thing. So for anybody listening, or, anybody out there with this, I'll do it when, it's not, to me, it's not even about the whole, like, life is short, just do it, Nike stuff, carpe diem.
Right.
Like, yes, I believe in all that to an extent, but it's not like I believe in, like, jumping off a plane and being an adrenaline junkie just to, like, feel like you're alive. It's a matter of discipline, and the fact that, like, no one's going to do it for you. And that's going to take place either now or 5 years from now. So it's kind of like a choice. And I think a lot of people are afraid of being faced with that choice and having to make a choice. And a lot of things stem from, fear, I think, for people. But, in this particular case, in that particular post, it was just so clear to me that, like, the whole reason the guy reached out to me in the first place was, I've been in this job for over a decade and I'm doing this and I don't want to do that. And if I can only, get to this place. And I'm like, that's why you got to start now. Just go, like, get it going so that you can do all that stuff. And the funny thing is, he like talked himself out of it as far as I'm concerned. I truly believe that. He's like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll give another 5 years. And I'm like, in 5 years, you're going to be telling me the same thing. And I hope to God he doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, that's my hope, obviously, but I don't think he would have reached out to me if there wasn't that thought. Yeah.
Yeah. The spark's there, right? The reach out's happening for a reason.
Yeah.
We know there's never a perfect time, but the fear of the unknown or making that choice is not an easy one to make. No doubt it's easier to stick with what you know. If the pain is not that bad, I'll just, keep going for as long as I think I can until I can't take it any longer. Yeah. Well, you and I both know that everything takes longer than you think. So you're Absolutely. Right. Like when you say you better start now, because, we have this idea that if I start now within that year, like, it's on, right? So it takes longer than we think if you're going to build something of significance, or if you're going to build the foundation of independence for yourself, both financially and flexibility of time and all those things. It's not a quick route, right?
No, it never is. Absolutely. Too many unexpected things happen.
And you have kids right now, so like, we think they're going to finish a phase. Oh, they're in this phase of whatever it may be, but it goes on to a new phase and on to a new phase. And you reach a certain level and it may not be what you think it is either. Well, that's a really good one. Thanks for sharing that one. Is there another common thread you see when talking to people outside of the waiting for the perfect time? Is there something else that you typically see?
In terms of why people will reach out, or
why putting off a decision to start something new or start building something for themselves and waiting? Is there another theme outside of getting to that perfect point? Is there something, mentality block that people get outside of the perfect timing?
You use the word block, and I do believe there is a learned block there, meaning conventional thought and how you're programmed to think. It's not that I'm like Mr. like conspiracy theory guy and, don't follow the news and all that stuff. Oh, well, don't follow the news too much. But anyway, like, the point I'm making is, I do think that there is, unfortunately, people get their hooks into you, and you are sort of told from a very young age. A lot of that comes from your upbringing. You can't dismiss the importance of that. But I certainly had that mentality, right? Like, I was 22. I went and worked for a company, and I just assumed that was how it was supposed to be. Like, cold call for a few years, you build up a book of business, then all of a sudden you're like a boss, and and then 10 years later, that's your road, right? And what do you do? As you go along that road, you get married, you have kids, you have a house, and then all of a sudden, a decade plus goes by. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I will say that I think that it is somewhat embedded in us. And unfortunately, the reality for a lot of people is that they wind up just not liking it, because frankly, it's not likable. If you're if you have a long commute and you're working with people that you don't necessarily like or love or whatever, you don't have to work with people you love, but certainly that you like, or if you're not actually doing an actual activity that is in at least some way interesting to you, you're going to have a very hard time um, looking at yourself in the mirror and feeling kind of good about what you see. Like there's only so many times you can tell yourself, it's a means to an end. It's like I am way more of a component of enjoy the ride, and like there is no end, and you just sort of keep going and building. And that's a very different, and I'm happy to say it's being embraced more now than ever, but that's a very different mentality than we've seen probably in the last at least 100 years in the United States. So
Yeah.
I do see signs that that's cracking, which is pretty cool. And some of it's not even by choice, especially in terms of technology that's now existing, and AI, and the way that work is going to be conducted. You're almost going to be forced into this shit. I got to build a brand, and I got to work in a different way. But what's good is, like I said, I think even before AI and all that, I think a lot of people were, the FIRE movement's a good example. I tend to think that's a little extreme, but it's really just a way for people to say, hey man, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do this conventional thing. I can make money my way, live my way. To me, that's what that movement's about. It's minimalist living, which, if that's your thing, that's cool. But that's what it's really more about. It's a lifestyle thing. And there is no set lifestyle in terms of how you make a living. And the more that people are starting to realize that, the more they're like, all right, I don't need to go to an office and do all this stuff.
It's definitely changed. The last 2-3 years, right? The whole
Definitely.
COVID lockdown, I think a lot of reflecting time was happening in there. People are starting to figure out, how do I design what I want to do here versus just following that path that was so laid out, like you're saying, that's been there decades and decades, right? That's just what we know. And like you said, from such a young age, we got grade 1, grade 2, like the plan is there.
Yeah.
We're
And
just following
I'm
that.
still amazed that people are surprised that they can design it. You know what I mean? That's just it's almost foreign to me. Like I've been working from home since before people were working from home. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, that's what I've been doing for, 2 decades now. And it's like very, very normal to me. And it's almost abnormal to me to hear people be so surprised by it still to this day. And I think, like I said, I think that foundation is definitely cracking.
Yeah. We used to see the pictures of the people on the beach with their laptops and think that was the ultimate goal, the ultimate dream of flexibility, to be able to work where you want, kind of when you want. And we are seeing that more and more. It's really cool. And you must see it a lot. And it's obviously opening up opportunity in terms of coaching and people wanting to learn more about it. I'm going to share one more post here and more in that realm about coaching, because it has opened up a world of coaches, and it has opened up this big sea of people now wanting to help them or thinking they can help them and that sort of thing. And by all means, I absolutely love coaching. I think we've had some back and forth about the term and gets a bad rap and that sort of thing, and what it is and what it isn't here. You kind of cover in your post, which I absolutely love. And you're saying it's a bit of a generalization, but you have a method, you have a structure, you've done it, you live it, which is so important. But what are you seeing out there? What's going to separate the great coaches from the good coaches? What do you see in that from your side?
The reason I harp on this a lot is not necessarily to disrespect other people and for them trying to make a living, but it's to make people aware to be very careful of who they work with and why they're working with them. And also to understand that in times of vulnerability, there's going to be more sharks in the water, obviously. And that this sort of mindset that I've had about the coaching industry really started during COVID, because you saw, it was some crazy statistic. There was like the number of coaches that were on LinkedIn was astronomical. And it was like, and in my head, the first thing I thought was, I was like, they're not all coaches. Like, no way. Not the real kind. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so to your question, I think the biggest differentiating factor, at least for me, like, look, if you're a 22-year-old and you want to call yourself a coach, that's fine. Your challenge is going to be that much harder to get people to believe you. But like I said, I'm all for anyone at any age trying to do whatever it is they want. But I do think that a differentiating factor, which you mentioned, is practicing what you preach, living the life that you actually are claiming you can get others to live as well. And like I said, I've been doing this 15 years. It's kind of like, it's not a great example, but if you want to lose weight, I tend to think it's probably less likely you're going to want to work with someone who is, obese or something, and doesn't have. They may read a lot of books and know how to do it, but I probably want to go with the person who looks a little more like what I want to look like in a certain period of time. And that's what they always say, you want to work with people who are 2 to 3 years ahead of you, right?
Right.
So if I'm working with a coach, I want someone who's lived it, who's breathed it, and who knows how to, who can back it up. And I think one of the biggest currencies that exist today, especially online, is this person who they say they are? And there's only so much you can figure out on your own as a potential client. Do your research, do your background, whatever you can do and find out about a person. Ultimately, it's going to be a leap of faith, right? But
Right.
At least for me personally, I like to have a ton of qualification dialogue with a person. I have them fill out a pretty extensive form. I want to know as much as I can, and I expect that person to want to know that much about me as well, so that when eventually you do have that call with that person, the real question isn't, do I want to work with this person? The real question is, are they who they say they are? And to me, that's what my final, if you want to call it, closing call really is. It's to demonstrate to that person that, like, hey, I'm the person that you've been reading about. I'm the person that you've seen every day on video. There's a reason you contacted me, and this is why and so if all those stars align, eventually you'll press the purchase button or whatever.
Yeah.
And you could get screwed. I'll still say that there are people out there who are mighty smart, mighty persuasive. But ultimately, I can't fault a person for doing their diligence and eventually, wanting to work with a person. As long as all that's done, I think you did the right thing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense on both sides.
Yeah.
It's a time investment as much as an effort investment, as much as it is a financial commitment as well, right?
Absolutely.
When you're coaching somebody, you put them at the forefront. You want the results equally for them, and you know that they're ready to do the work for it. Now, you mentioned video there. Yes, we see you on video, especially for anybody listening who's on the LinkedIn platform. It's hard not to see your videos. Are you doing 1 video a day, 2 videos a day? What are you posting right now? How much
I
content?
I do one video a day and one text post a day.
It is impressive. What have you learned through that journey of becoming from a coach and running your own businesses and everything to now being a content creator and putting yourself out there? What's something that you've learned about yourself, maybe doing it, or something you can help share with other people that are also
Sure.
trying to put themselves out there?
Well, one thing I've learned is that I very much pay attention to what I'm not willing to do. And one conclusion I've come to about myself is that I'm really lazy, and like I could never do like a 15-minute high production edited YouTube type style video. Like, it'll never happen. And when I first started doing this, I got a camera. Now I just use my phone, but I had a camera, and I wanted to make it as like easy as I possibly could. And so I literally, like, people think videos take a while. My average video is between like a minute and a half and 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that the whole process takes under 10, I'm not like exaggerating, because I do it in one take. I use like a caption program, and that's like it. So that's the first thing I'll say, is that like really get comfortable with whatever it is you're comfortable with. Me, it's like a simple process. I know the whole thing is like from start to finish, it's 10 minutes, 15 at most. So because you don't want to burn out. I think that's really, really important. Something that you can stick with like forever. As far as getting yourself out there, luckily I'm pretty comfortable with all that stuff. So like I don't want to use the word I don't care. Like everybody cares about what people think. I care. Care what the right people think. But so luckily, like I don't mind public forums. I don't mind like this podcast. Like I don't mind talking and saying how I feel. But for someone who doesn't, which I think is more important and more of what you're getting at, my best advice is really, start small. Especially with something like video, like if you're really nervous, like don't post it, just see what it feels like to actually go in front of a camera and like say something. I've worked with a number of people who were like freaking out about it, and it was amazing to see their transformations within weeks. It's really just repetition. I think confidence just builds from the reps. It builds from exposing yourself over and over and over again to the same thing. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like second nature. It's not hard at all. So to anyone out there, and speaking of video, I think I was one of the early video people on LinkedIn, because that was back in like 2020. I think Shay Rowbottom was really like the first who kind of really took that by storm. And I personally believe that, especially with AI, technology, all that stuff, it's going to get harder and harder and harder for you to be you, and people know that it's you. And luckily, or I think, until AI perfects video and you don't have to like be yourself on camera, I think there's a very, very big, good place for making videos of yourself. So
yeah, it makes sense, right? To stand out, you're not going to stand out, I guess, with just straight text or copy anymore these days like you did before. I mean, our appreciation for writing in general we don't give it as much attention as we used to. What's lighting you up? What's keeping you going these days? What's one of your motivators that have you show up every day and ready to keep going?
That's a really good question. I think I've always just been hardwired to. I get bored very easily. I like to. My favorite moments are like aha moments, and that's almost like my fuel. And when I'm pressed in something where it eventually becomes very rote and very just textbook and the same thing every day over and over, that tends to be tough. So like today, like recently, I've immersed myself in learning Twitter, just because it's fun to me. It's like a video game. I like last 2 months, I've been reaching out to everyone, finding out like, what are the tricks? What do you do? Da, 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 da. And it's like, as soon as I figure it out, and I think I'm almost there as far as clarity on it, on the platform, my prediction is within a couple of months, I'll do what I have to do every single day on there, but I'll get bored. And then I'll want to do something else. So when it comes to this particular, like the coaching thing, what I love about it and what I loved about the websites is that there's no end. And that to me is very attractive. So like with the websites, it's like, with the coaching, it's like, all right, well, my number one thing is obviously one-to-one coaching, right? And then below that, you do group coaching. Below that, I haven't even gotten to the below group coaching yet, which would be some sort of community that would be very moderate in pricing. But below that's a free course. And it's like, so you got those 4 things, and it's like, damn, that's a lot. That's years of work that I could be doing. And that to me is exciting to see that out there. The ultimate goal, who knows, maybe like a Tony Robbins type situation, but I don't, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I'm going to damn well it's not even like I want that exact goal. I just know that I want something where I can keep going.
Keep going. Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Yeah. You're a builder. It sounds like you mentioned you love when you're in that mode of learning, doing, and finding those light bulb moments. I love it. Well, thanks so much for jumping on and sharing. Keep doing what you're doing. The impact is growing. The ripple effects are going to be there, and just keep, showing up in those amazing t-shirts and putting yourself out there. We all appreciate it. And thanks for jumping on today, Nat.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Greg.
All right. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Be sure to check the show notes for a recap of the lessons so you can reference them as you look to apply them to your journey. Please be sure to subscribe, give it a like, and a comment. It is very much appreciated. Have a great day, a great week, and let's go and grow.